Welcome to the astrological weather report for the January lunar cycle, generating a new future. We stand on a threshold of a new age, an age that is mirrored in the time when Buddha, Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Homer walked on the planet. A golden age shimmers backward through time from a future to which we are returning. We may not all live to see it in this lifetime, but we can see it in our mind's eye, and we can go there with our intentions. Our children and their grandchildren will see it. The generation coming onto the planet, born with Pluto and Capricorn, will build the new earth promised by Eckhart Tolle. In the meantime, all of us are down here on the ground, up to our ankles in karmic alligators. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We have been tasked with healing the decades, centuries, and millennia of cultural toxins that have delivered the consequences of our present time. Like it or not, it is an inconvenient truth that we all chose to be here now. This month, we will see the next round of the work before us. COVID numbers have doubled twice in the last few weeks to unprecedented levels. Every day, the news delivers another story or two of gun violence. American politics echo the war between the states. International tensions have too many similarities to the time before both world wars. The work begins with each one of us, with ourselves, in our families, in our neighborhoods and communities. Consciousness increases geometrically, not 1 + 1, but 1 × 2 × 4 × 8, and so on. Important spiritual growth does not happen in meditation or on a yoga mat. It happens in our lives moment to moment as we catch ourselves expressing some conditioned reaction and changing our response. Let's all agree that we're here to do the work and be here now. Jupiter will be the primary planetary theme of 2022. The new moon, right at the beginning of the year, presents us with Jupiter square the lunar nodes. Nodal squares are a condition known as a skip step. Something from the past has been overlooked, left unresolved, denied, or dismissed. A square to the lunar nodes necessitates resolution of the embedded planetary archetype. The lunar nodes are the karmic evolutionary trajectory forward. They hold the imprint of our emotional nature from the past and the soul's intention for the future. Proximity to the lunar nodes by the luminaries at a new moon or a full moon generates the remarkable twice-yearly seasonal, quote, breakout or breakthrough events that we know as eclipses. 2 weeks later, on January 18th, the lunar nodes will enter Taurus and Scorpio, where they will reside for the next 18 months. Venus retrograde will be the ruler of the lunar north node. Venus will station direct a couple of weeks into the nodal ingress, but the retrograde imprint will format the entire 18-month cycle. Currently, Uranus and Eris both station direct in January and station retrograde in July. Uranus and Eris both station direct on January 10th, 2020. Saturn squared Eris a week later on January 16th, 2020, presenting the first cases of COVID in the United States. Outer planets slow down over many weeks. Other planetary events act as the actual trigger of the event. Eris stationed on January 10th and Uranus stationed on January 14th, 2021, instigating the Capitol riot. Saturn was in orbit of a last quarter square to Uranus. Eris stations direct again on January 10th, 2022. Uranus stations direct on January 18th, the same day the lunar nodes ingress Taurus and Scorpio. Uranus has transited Taurus since 2018. The lunar north node in Taurus will amplify karmic and evolutionary pressures to awaken a new realization about the future. Hygeia continues to be a major player in 2022, opposing Uranus from January to September. And Saturn has squared Uranus since February of 2021, perfecting 3 times, and will remain in orb until October 2022. There's a majority of Capricorn energies through this entire lunar month, and Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn in square to Uranus. So these are the delineation of the actual dates and zodiacal points of each of these aspects. We see the new moon and Mercury both occurring on January 2nd. Then Eris is direct and Vesta ingresses Capricorn the next day. Mercury stations retrograde on the 14th, along with Ceres stationing direct. And then on January 17th, we have the full moon at 27 Cancer 50. On the 18th, the next day, Uranus will station direct. And then only 3 hours later, the lunar nodes will ingress Taurus and Scorpio. January 14th, we'll see Mars ingress Capricorn, and the next day, Mercury will ingress Capricorn. And as I said, the year begins with Jupiter in Pisces squaring the Gemini lunar nodes, and Saturn in the square until the middle of October. At the end of January, Hygeia will move into an opposition to Uranus and remain there for most of the year until the middle of September. And then we'll have Ceres conjunct the lunar north node in Taurus from the end of January until early February. Excuse me. So the Capricorn new moon occurs on the 2nd at 12 degrees Capricorn, 20 minutes. And I have in each of these slides, I have in this lighter gray, I have all of the aspects, the phasal relationship between the aspects, the planets, and I'll leave that to you to read them in your own, to absorb them. I'm just going to go through really what this all means and what the impact of it is, and as we move through it, how we're going to work with it. So outer world events are initiating a new paradigm of who we're becoming. And in the disseminating phase, and there's a lot of disseminating phases throughout this entire month, an integration occurs as a personal sense of purpose is expressed through social interaction. It's where we bring ourselves and the purpose that was exposed at the full moon into the social sphere, into the upper half, into the northern hemisphere of the chart. Collectively, we have been in a crisis of awareness. That's a Dane Roger concept, a crisis of consciousness, balancing our own sense of self and what consensus reality is demanding. We know what we need to do. Now we have to do it. And attention to our self-care has been the focus since the onset of COVID, and it's been driven by the chaotic loss of normalcy and communal discord. That's what the chaos and discord that Eris is famous for is doing. It's evolving us to recognize what's essential in our lives. Our commitment to ourselves has been driven by both collective delusion and fear. We are all going through it, but we have to recognize that for the most part, it's just chemicals coursing through our bloodstream. It's not us. We're not those chemicals. We are something much greater than that. The base note of our times is generating an increase in human consciousness and new paradigms for the future. And this is what we need to hold on to, that we are building a new future, but we have an awful lot of work to do to fix everything that's wrong with the old world, if you would, for that new world to have the room to grow. So this is Mercury. And I have an animation here that I'm going to run in a minute, and you'll be able to actually see the dynamics of Mercury and its aspects. But Mercury, as I said, is going to turn retrograde on the 14th. And prior to that retrograde, it's going to aspect Ceres, it's going to ingress into Aquarius, and then it's going to aspect the lunar north node. And then it's going to mirror those aspects again as it moves backward through the end of January, and then it will conjoin Juno and Pluto. So I'll just run this for you, and you can watch, you can see it as it progresses forward, moves up to its station, reverses direction, comes back up, trines the Ceres in the lunar north node again, squares Hygeia, conjuncts Pluto and Juno. So the opportunities arise to bring a new perspective to the sense of loss and normalcy. We're gonna have some ways to work through it. The lunar north node is going to provide us with the opportunities, if you would. It's going to open up some new vistas for us. Inspirations from the higher mind punctuate rational thinking, creating opportunities to rethink the future. This is Mercury. And crisis in action regarding self-care from Hygeia. And disruptive mental processes that instigate review and analysis of who we're becoming individually and collectively as Uranus enters Aquarius, which is our sign of becoming. Disruptive mental processes that instigate review and analysis. I guess I said that. Rethinking commitment to self-responsibility. That we need to be responsible to ourselves. This is Juno. And mental self-empowerment. This is Pluto. So Mars is going to square the Pallas Athena Neptune conjunction. It's going to trine Eris, sesqui-square Uranus, form inconjuncts to Ceres and the lunar north node, and then by the end of the month it will be moving into Capricorn. You can see picks up the sesqui-square, picks up the inconjuncts to the node. Strengthens that inconjunct, trine, and ends with the trine to Uranus. Trine to the lunar north node. So Mars is our choices. It's what we choose. It's the lower octave of Pluto. Pluto is our deepest unconscious desires. Mars is how we act on them. It's how we consciously make the choices that are aligned with our soul intention, with what those soul desires are for this lifetime, for the lunar nodes. So what are the choices that we're making that are being suggested by our higher mind, by Pallas Athena? The Pallas Athena is the octave transformer between Mercury and Uranus. Mercury being the lower octave of our mind, and Uranus being the higher octave. And Pallas Athena is able to navigate and close that gap and take those irrational ideas that seem to come out of left field from Uranus and find rational applications for them in Mercury. Are you acting on what your intuition is telling you? Neptune is both intuition and delusion, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. But the intuition will come from your heart. The delusion will come from your head, and we have to learn to discern the difference. And behavior is radicalized by outer world conditions with crises regarding a perception of the future. People are going crazy. I mean, I don't know a nice way to phrase that. Everybody's getting very radicalized. Some of us are getting radicalized in terms of ourselves and understanding what we need to do, and others are just playing at their crazed bucket list. We have to, when we go out the front door, we have to keep our eyes open and look over our shoulder in all directions. On January 3rd, Jupiter in Pisces squares the lunar nodes. Sagittarius correlates to our personal belief systems. It correlates to how we self-actualize in society. And in Sagittarius, we become conscious of the philosophical understanding that we are part of and connected to something that's much greater than ourselves. Gemini correlates to the student and the collection and organization of ideas and concepts into a coherent framework that satisfies the soul's core need for security by intellectually understanding the world around us. Sagittarius is the teacher, coalescing those bits of data gathered by Gemini into a comprehensive whole, a belief system that becomes a personal foundation. So Sag and Gemini are about cognition and intellect. Sagittarius correlates to our personal belief systems. And this nodal square refers to the need to resolve the contradictions, misunderstandings, and self-identification of what we believe. We become self-identified with what we believe. and how we see ourselves as well. That's the moon. So we have to, get some objectivity, and, as the Aquarian energy that's in the field should help us, get at arm's length with what we feel is true, what we feel is false, with our reactions versus our responses to stressful situations, etc. Sagittarius follows Scorpio in the natural order of the zodiac. Has our belief system developed from emotionally conditioned shadow material sequestered deep in our subconscious? Are we acting, knee-jerk reactions based on fear, based on parental or gender or cultural conditioning? Is our cognitive process the result of hidden obsessions? Very Pluto, very Scorpio. Sagittarius correlates to how we self-actualize in society. Have we brought forward the prejudices and moral judgments that are the product of parental, family, generational, or religious conditioning? Excuse me. The resolution of a skip step is through the archetype of the lunar node, which was last transited. In this case, that is the lunar south node. The impetus is to re-image the past and to intend a future that does not repeat the past as the future or as the present. So the nodal square is generating an environment of clashing beliefs. Does what we think come from our intuition? This maybe sounds a little repetitive. Is our belief system anchored in ancestral patterning, which is Saturn? What is the metaphysical framework of the world around us? That's Pisces. Has my religious upbringing impeded my ability to reason? Saturn. And have I become self-righteous, failing to compassionately understand or accept the belief of others? That's also Pisces. On January 17th, the moon forms a partile opposition to the sun in Capricorn at 26 degrees, 49 minutes. This is the Cancer full moon. Personal concerns for safety and security and the stresses of conforming to consensus reality are exposed. Capricorn is consensus reality. The moon is how we see ourselves. And this can be a conflict. Do we feel safe, by just complying with what the consensus wants us to do? Or do we recognize that there is safety and security in listening to what the pundits are saying, how we need to protect ourselves? We all have to make these choices on our own. The consequences of these choices will be based on what personal beliefs are exposed. And again, it's going to expose. The full moon is an exposure. The moon, the sun's light is fully exposed in the moon, and the sun fully exposes the moon with its light. But it works both ways. It's a moment of complete exposure at the opposition. So personal beliefs are going to be exposed as Jupiter is squaring the nodes. And these things are all going to come to light. We find solace by accepting and surrendering to the knowledge that everything is unfolding exactly as it's supposed to. And this is a very Neptunian way of behaving. Everything unfolds exactly as it's supposed to. We can push back against the things that happen to us, but that only seems to make them worse. We need to respond in a conscious way, in a way of accepting and surrendering to what is, and working with what is rather than pushing back against what isn't. We're hoping for what isn't in the space of what is. How are we personally feeling disempowered is exposed. Emotional security is bolstered by listening to our inner voice. We all have intuition. We all have an inner voice that is just waiting, is just there waiting for us to hear it and to act on it, which is even more important. It's not enough to just hear it, we have to act on it. And what's the degree of our commitment to our own safety? What are we willing to do or not do in order to take care of ourselves and to be safe? And this is important. Do we draw a line as to what we think is where that priority falls short? The pressures on our healthcare system and to maintain our own health equilibrium is generating emotional crises that are exposed to dyslination. I don't know if you know anybody who is chronically ill But having to deal with the current health system in the United States in some ways is worse than the disease itself. So it's another reason why we need to take care of ourselves. The discordant undercurrent presented by the Pluto-Eris square is generating emotional crises that are exposed to disclination. The Pluto-Eris square is what I've been talking about for 2 or 3 years now. It's in my opinion, it's the core aspect that really underscores everything that's happening to us. It hasn't happened in 2,700 years. And this is my reference back to Homer and Plato and Confucius and all the saints and masters who are on the planet in the axial age. It's the last time that this square happened. It's quite a major event. So we have a number of interesting configurations going on. You know, there's more than one kind of trine. A yacht is a trine. A Thor's hammer is a trine. So trines are not necessarily all, you know, good or beneficial. They're all beneficial. It's a kind of difficult word to use. It doesn't mean that something pleasant is necessarily going to happen, because we go through crisis. We need these emotional crises in order to move forward, and that's what Thor's hammers and yachts do. In this case, this trine is between Neptune and the Moon and the lunar south node, and it's causing some emotional overwhelm in the present. Not necessarily something that's easy to deal with when you have the Moon and Neptune and the lunar south node. It can be absolutely overwhelming. The yacht is a finger of God, and it focuses on Mars with the lunar north, with Gemini and the Moon. It's our security depends on making more conscious choices going forward. Again, Mars is our choices, and the lunar north node is clearly about our karmic trajectory and becoming more conscious. And the Moon is how we see ourselves. It's our ego. It's our default way of behaving. So this is all coming to play on the choices that we're making going forward. And the Thor's hammers there's inspirations and strategies that come to us that are literally forcing us to take better care of ourselves and not be depending on others for our well-being. You don't want to go into the health system. Eris stations direct on January 10th at 23 degrees 41 minutes. A retrograde, planetary retrograde, is not a lessening or a diminution. It's an intensification. It's like drilling down. It's drilling down in a single point, like the sun's rays, through a magnifying glass, focused, burning a leaf until it bursts into flame. That's what a retrograde does, especially in these outer planets that spend weeks in some cases. You're moving at a very slow speed and finally, come to a halt. But that halt itself is not just a couple of hours like it is for Mercury. At the current point in her orbit, Eris retrogrades in July and stations direct in January. As I said earlier, when Eris stationed direct in January of 2020, COVID emerged, and in 2021, the station direct brought us the U.S. Capitol riot. The Moon correlates to our emotional bodies and the sense of safety and security. Venus corresponds to what is essentially important for survival, expressed as our personal values and resulting priorities. When COVID first started, the word that was the catchword for the entire thing was essential. What was essential, and it's still true. Get ahead of my story. We're coming into Scorpio and Taurus Scorpio and Taurus in the lunar nodes. We're also talking about essential, because Taurus is about what's essential. Pluto is the evolutionary engine. It's the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly. I love the anecdotal, I don't know what it is or who wrote it, what we can call it, but you've probably heard this phrase that the butterfly looked up at the caterpillar looked up at the butterfly and said, "You'll never get me up in one of those things." That's Pluto's activity on our being. Mercury correlates to the narratives we tell ourselves and to others. It's our sincerity, our eloquence, and it's our duplicity. And with Mercury and Eris combination, our thoughts are going to be interruptive, and they're going to disrupt our emotions. We can need to be prepared that the narratives that are going to be running through the news and the narratives that we're going to be telling ourselves could be quite an emotional journey. And Mars formats our conscious choices in concert with our personal beliefs. I said that necessities and soul directives. A radicalization of ideas permeates the zeitgeist. The ideas are getting radicalized. They're getting polarized. The belief systems. Vesta correlates to our sacred commitment to ourselves. The outer world events can either empower or disassociate us from our sense of self. It can be empowering or disempowering, and very disassociative. It can actually cause us to, it could be a difficult psychological state. On the 14th of January, Mercury stations retrograde at 10 Aquarius, 20 minutes. Our ego, how we see ourselves, our sense of self-responsibility, and our individuality are the themes of this retrograde cycle. And we are what we think. We create our own reality according to the ideas and opinions that we believe are true. We live according to our belief systems. And what are we telling ourselves about COVID? And what are we telling ourselves about our own personal state of health, the degree of our health and our health care, self-care? The first Hermetic principle is that the universe is mental. Thought precedes action. Thought forms manifest outer world events, circumstances, and relationships. We don't perceive the world around us, we project it. Our eyes are not something that receives images. Two people look at the same thing and see two entirely different things. We project our belief onto everything that we see. And what we project outward with our thoughts determines the circumstances, the situations, the relationships that will show up in our lives. Use this time to review and examine your subconscious conversations with yourself and others, and ask yourself if what you are mentally creating is the present and future that you are consciously intending. Mercury will station direct again on the 3rd of February at 24 degrees Capricorn, 24 minutes, and it will exit its shadow, returning to the degree it was at when it turned retrograde on February 24th. On January 14th, Ceres is going to station direct at 27 degrees of Taurus, 57 minutes. Crises erupt that compel new choices for dealing with the loss of normalcy and our commitment to self-nurturing. Ceres, Demeter, was the divine mother. She's about, she cared for the entire world through agriculture and creating abundance and fertility. But the stories about her, I won't take the time to repeat the whole story, but it also refers to the blighting of agriculture, to the blighting of nature, and to the loss of what it is that we need to nurture ourselves and be well. We need to learn how to self-nurture ourselves, to take care of ourselves, not to expect somebody else to come along and help us in any way that we can. That means having your own garden, to cover some of the shortages on the shelves that could happen down the line. We need to be self-sufficient. Uranus stations direct on the 18th at 10 degrees Taurus, 49 minutes. And again, I've broken these charts down to show these underlying configurations that underline this station direct. It's pretty intense. We have a Grand Cross, we have another yod, and then we have two different, two different Thor's hammers, no, 3 Thor's hammers. I thought it's 3. The great disruptor reawakens. Uranus is the disruptor. Uranus and Aquarius follow Saturn and Capricorn, and Saturn and Capricorn, everything gets structured, form and structure is created, it's consensus reality. Uranus is individuality. Uranus comes along and shakes up that form, shakes up the crystallized forms, and shatters them. so that something else can arise in its place. That's Uranus's action. That's why it's so difficult when we have a Uranus transit, because it shakes us to our core, but it doesn't shake the core itself. The core is always intact. It just shakes all the things that we have built, that have conditioned that core, so that the core, that our core selves, our true self, can realign and move in the direction that our soul has intended. The destruction opens the space for a new sense of individuality, independence, and freedom to emerge. And mental narratives focus on personal priorities and the authenticity of who we're becoming as individuals and as a collective. Uranus and Taurus is going to focus on the embodiment of what is essential for our personal growth. Taurus is embodiment. And COVID has illuminated the essential necessity for taking responsibility for our own health. I can't say that enough. There are a number of gibbous phase aspects that move through this nodal ingress. The gibbous phase correlates to the Virgo dynamic, and again, it's growth through crisis. We grow through direct emotional experience. We don't grow through intellectual understanding. You can have an idea, somebody can tell you something, you can think something, but it doesn't mean that you're going to change in response to it. But when we have a direct emotional experience, that's when we begin to institute changes. That's when we say, well, something's got to change. Emotional crises trigger self-narratives that encourage the individual process of becoming and awaken the need for proactive self-care. Jupiter in Pisces squares the lunar nodes, bridging the transition from the restlessness of loner Sagittarius to the cosmically connected Pisces. Personal truth becomes universal truth. And a crisis in consciousness is revealed by the consequences of failing to listen to the whispers from the higher mind. The lunar nodes are the karmic evolutionary trajectory. They carry forward the emotional memories of the past as the personal work in the present, and they hold potentials that seed the future. The lunar north node carries the karmic imprint of what we need to evolve. It's human nature to remain the same, to hold on to what is safe and familiar. Scorpio confronts our natural resistance for change with compelling circumstances and experiences that necessitate evolutionary change. A dramatic transformation is underway that is changing the way we understand ourselves and our society. Who have we become? Who are we becoming? What are the values that we profess and adhere to? What are our collective and individual priorities that we practice or ignore? Issues regarding truth and lies, intuition and illusion will continue to permeate public and private narratives as Jupiter in Pisces squares the lunar nodes. The options that we are faced with will be pressured by the consequences of past choices, the memories of what has been lost, and of our hopes, dreams, and conscious intentions for the future. Mental and emotional downloads will permeate and dissolve our self-identification to our beliefs, and the boundaries of our imagination and our dreams will become more fluid. If we surrender and accept the new messages that we receive, new pathways of understanding will reveal themselves. The pathway forward is through the acceptance of the current state of the world around us, and to begin to make healthy lifestyle changes in ourselves in response to what is happening on the outside. New insights will advocate paradigms and strategies for revisiting and revising old methods that have become outdated. And a new sacred commitment to self and to community is possible, but it must be approached proactively. Empowerment is through self-responsibility and anchoring to values and priorities that promote progressive methodologies. We can instill our narratives with a more positive outlook and encourage different probabilities for the future. Pluto becomes the ruler of the lunar south node. Pluto takes no prisoners. When Pluto shows up, our only option is surrender. Pluto and its ruling planet Scorpio and its ruling planet Pluto correlate to the soul. Venus retrograde in Capricorn will be the ruler of the lunar south node at the ingress. And even though it turns direct a couple of weeks later, that dynamic will be embedded through the entire 18-month cycle. Taurus is the inner directed yin expression of Venus, goddess of relationship. Taurus correlates to our relationship with ourselves. And Taurus magnetizes us to what is essential for our survival. So karmic processes unfold as personal metamorphosis and generate evolutionary change. It is the transformation of the caterpillar into the butterfly that I described. As the lunar south node transits Scorpio, circumstances and events will expose cultural toxins that have been buried in our psyches for decades, centuries, and in some cases, millennia. A dramatic transformation is underway that is changing the way we understand ourselves and our society. Karmic processes unfold as personal metamorphosis and generate evolutionary change. And there's a potential for a new sense of unity, understanding, and compassion for the world around us, even as the world's stresses continue. Jupiter in Pisces presages the approaching conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune in April. In medical astrology, Neptune correlates to pandemics and diseases of an unknown origin. Jupiter expands whatever it comes in contact with. Jupiter in Pisces will create new consciousness, but it will come about through our emotional bodies. COVID, unfortunately, will continue to disrupt our lives with direct emotional experiences that expose what is essential for our survival. The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that occurs in April will set in motion. I have more to say this, obviously, as the year progresses. And I've also written about it in my annual forecast, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. It will set in motion circumstances that will compel increased awareness and consciousness. And I'm reading this because this is what is inherent in Jupiter's transit of Pisces as well. It literally presages this upcoming conjunction. The 15-year cycle of Jupiter and Neptune will activate global awakening to the issues that threaten our survival. We will learn through direct emotional experiences. As I said, it's not enough just to think of something. And COVID is necessitating a more conscious global approach to healthcare. This combination of Jupiter and Pisces and Neptune holds great promise for collective awakening as we work through the litany of world crises. But the events that began to unfold in 2020 continue to steamroll into the future. Is the message. On January 19th, the sun will ingress Aquarius. Mercury approaches its inferior conjunction and departs the evening sky. Our narratives turn inward, focused on our personal development. There's a disturbance in the field. Authority is shaken in some way. The sun separates from the new phase conjunction to Juno. A new cycle is unfolding, concerned with our commitment and responsibility to who we are becoming. And COVID is teaching us that we need to nurture ourselves. Opportunities arise that facilitate healing the past and reimagining the future. And challenges arise that compel us to find new ways of being. We see ourselves in a new light that facilitates different choices. And a groundswell of resistance emerges to the official efforts to contain the spread of COVID. And inner messages alter the sense of who we are and deepen our commitment to ourselves. On January 29th, Venus will station direct. And it is, as I said, it is the ruler of the lunar north node, but it will still be carrying that retrograde dynamic with it in some way through this entire cycle. Chaotic circumstances present more responsible choices that authentically support who we want to become. Relationship wounding from the past can linger. We can find our independence and self-reliance within the framework of healthy self-reliant relationships. Work with your partner to realize to realize, excuse me, work with your partner to realize and support mutual self-care. That's part of what this year is also about. As Venus is retrograde, is that there's going to be a lot of relationship work with Venus in Capricorn. Relationships can be restructured. Power can be shared. We can actually begin to work on ourselves through our relationships in a very generative way. On the 24th, Mars is going to ingress Capricorn. And the responsibility of our personal choices that we are faced will come under increasing pressure from numerous directions. How we see ourselves, which is the moon, our degree of self-empowerment, which is Pluto, our commitment to ourselves, which is Juno, our awareness of who we are becoming, our self-responsibility, how we are nurturing ourselves, which is Ceres, and how we are attending to our own self-care. Ceres is going to conjoin the lunar north node on the 31st. We're going to have amplified mental narratives. Mercury and emotions, moon, are still holding on to the trauma of recent events, resulting in new priorities, Venus, and self-empowerment, Pluto, and commitment to self, Vesta. I've put together the third year in a row now, an annual review of the entire year. I can say humbly that I think it's the best one I've ever written. And it's a comprehensive, detailed evolutionary forecast for the year. I address the questions of what are the planetary events that have led up to this year? Where have we come from? And what are the major planetary influences for the entire year? It's actually a detailed calendar of all 12 months. What can we expect regarding COVID, and what does the future look like? What does it look like down the road in the decade coming up ahead of us? We talk about the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, the nodal ingress in greater detail, the skip steps from Jupiter, Saturn, and Vesta, Uranus, Hygeia, and Ceres on the lunar nodes, the Taurus and Scorpio eclipses, the Venus retrograde, the Mercury retrograde, and I also have a chapter on the US Pluto return and US Pluto opposition. And as always, I have something to say about Eris. This is where you can get in touch with me. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to this forecast. Be well, be safe, be kind. I will see you next month. Namaste.